Hi everybody, good afternoon, and you're very welcome to the BAPM webinar on building successful perinatal teams. I'm Cora Doherty. I'm a neonatologist in Cardiff, and it is my great pleasure to be able to welcome a fantastic group of speakers this afternoon to speak about building perinatal teams, and really focused around the BAPM framework for building successful perinatal teams, which has been aligned to all of the perinatal optimisation and the toolkits which have been developed by BAPM to support a number of quality indicators and clinical care around the perinatal management and optimisation for preterm babies. I mean, most of you who are here will, I suppose there's more and more evidence being gathered about the benefits of team working in the perinatal sphere, and it being known as the secret sauce. And if you think about what is the aim of a team, and it really is to have success. And I told Tony I wouldn't mention this, but if you look at a successful team at the moment, if you look at, say, the Irish rugby team, they're so driven, they're working together, they're cohesive. So it's exactly the same that you would find within a medical team. So without further ado, I am going to invite Amy, who is a parent, to give us a parent story about her experience with perinatal optimisation, working with the PeriPrem team. So Amy, are you happy to come in? Thank you.
I'm Amy Turner. I had my little girl nearly 5 years ago. She was 28 weeks and she was born in Swindon Great Western Hospital. And I didn't know at the start until later, after I'd had Lily, that they'd done the PeriPrem bundle with me and Lily. And I started to learn a little bit more about it. And then once Lily had been discharged from hospital, I was contacted by her consultant, Sarah Bates, who got me involved with PeriPrem. I played quite a big part in PeriPrem because I guess I wanted to change for everyone, not just me. I noticed a massive difference within Lily, so I wanted to make sure that other parents get that. We decided to create a parent passport so that you didn't kind of feel like left out, because you do get that feeling of being left out when your baby's in special care, because you don't get to do, I guess, all the generic normal things that a normal parent does do. And everything seems like it's going to last forever. And you feel like you feel like a waste of space just sat next to the bed, although you're not, but you do feel that way. So we created the parent passport to try and take back a little bit of control, so that it's something that you can also keep, but also something that can you can see what's happening, what's going to happen next. You can kind of take a little bit of charge within having your newborn baby. It's no different to a normal pregnancy, so it shouldn't be treated any differently. So it's definitely essential to have parents involved within PeriPrem, because we're on the other side. So you've got you guys that are working to save us and help and make them better and make them stronger, but the parents also have a massive part in that. And obviously we're going to be the ones that continue to do that when they come home. So it's definitely important to have us involved, because we have the other side of it and we can understand how we feel and explain what we want to learn and what we want to do, because we have to go through it. So I was in hospital with Lily for 3 months and I learned a lot, and I still use that in day-to-day life. Even though she's nearly 5, I still use all the things that I learned from all the doctors and nurses. So I just want it to be okay for parents to ask questions and for them to be answered, and to have us a massive part of it is definitely important. So yeah.
Thank you so much, Amy, for coming to talk to us about your little baby, Lily. I just wanted to say that we are going to have questions at the end, question and answer at the end, where you'll be able to put your hand up and ask a question, or you can also put a question into the chat. And And so in the meantime, if everybody could just, obviously you've got your cameras and you're all muted, so just to just mention that housekeeping. So the next speaker we've got today is Tony Kelly, who is the head of the MAT Neo SIP program. And Tony is really going to come and focus on really talking about culture and leadership, which again, we are becoming increasingly spoken about, particularly in relation to improvement and high quality and high reliable clinical care and outcomes. So over to you, Tony. Thank you very much.
So nice to not see everyone, be part of the meeting this afternoon. Really, really important piece of work that's been led by BAPM, and I think is going to really help us in taking forward the work around the optimization of these preterm babies specifically, and building on those successes that certainly that Amy was highlighting, and building on some of the work that has been done by the PeriPrem group in the Southwest and the West of England AHSNs. And certainly one of the elements that I think sits underneath an awful lot of what we do or don't do particularly well relates to the culture that sits within our teams at the moment. And undoubtedly, we're working in a very difficult time when we're all dealing with quite significant amounts of vacancy, absences, sickness, and also post-COVID, all dealing with quite a lot of difficulty in the fact that a lot of the goodwill that we were relying on in the system is running a little bit thin. So I'm involved as a National Clinical Advisor for the MAT Neo SIP program, as some of you may be aware of, but also we've developed a larger piece of work on looking at how we can develop safety culture across perinatal teams that sits within the sort of the larger vehicle of the maternity transformation program in NHS England. Really what we're thinking about when we talk about culture, and culture means different things to different people. There are various definitions of culture, and certainly the one on the right hand side of this slide is one I think that is relatively easy to digest and most people will identify with. The reason for putting up the Culture Club album cover on the left is for two reasons. One, because it dates me, in the fact that it's a cultural reference that means something to me, but it might not mean something to many of the people on the call, because you might be significantly younger and music from the 80s means nothing to you. But equally, Boy George as a character in the 80s was quite divisive. I lived, growing up in the early to mid 80s and moving out into the world, he was somebody who many people didn't really understand, didn't really get. And so our culture has shifted enormously and become a lot more open, interesting, and certainly more permissive. But it's an incredibly important part of high functioning teams and culture is this essence of diversity, both of opinion and a variety of other characteristics. But what we're really aiming for, I think, when we talk about culture is something that feels like this. So that we're crafting, creating and nurturing those conditions, because you can't make culture happen. It's something that has to be very organic in the way that it develops. But it's for individuals and teams to flourish in the delivery of brilliant care in the way that Amy was just, sort of making examples of in her presentation. That's the far end of what we're seeing. And really, I think what we need to do is to put in things that will allow this to move forward. Now, we're getting a bit of a bashing at the moment in maternity and perinatal services. Reading through the findings of Ockenden and the recent report from Bill Kirkup from East Kent are quite sobering, and highlight a number of issues which are perennially about culture within our perinatal teams. We've looked at this previously within the program I've worked on in between 2017 and 2019. We did a large safety culture evaluation process across the country to try and help and support teams to move forward in this space. But we really struggled, really struggled, and struggled for a number of reasons. Firstly, I don't think we were as articulate as we needed to be about linking quality improvement and safety culture, because they both support each other in a way I'll come on and talk about in a second. But you can't do one without the other. And I think clinical teams particularly find it very difficult to understand how you can start to make improvements in the culture within our teams to support clinical services without having some form of approach to it that feels tangible. Otherwise, it gets lost in that sort of slightly fluffy nature that some of this work can be sort of perceived as. But equally, what we found before was there was a very large degree of dissonance between the view of culture, say between senior managers and board level executives within trust and people who are delivering clinical care on a day-to-day basis. And there was also a big variation in what culture looked like between different clinical settings. So there would be a difference between culture within teams on delivery suites versus those on neonatal units. And the one thing that was very, very evident, which I think has probably got worse, is the high levels of burnout within those teams, despite the high quality care they're trying to deliver. So what we're trying to do differently, and again, this is across the whole of the work in maternity and perinatal improvement, not just within this area around optimization. But what we're trying to do is to warm the system up to do some more work in this culture space. So we've been doing work with board level safety champions over the last year or so. We're going to be doing another more universal approach to culture surveys, but we're going to provide that with much more effective debriefing. So I'm getting a bit of echo. I don't know if somebody's just make sure you're on mute.
Could somebody mute themselves? If everybody just make sure you're muted. Yeah. Sorry, Tony.
So that debriefing process will allow people to understand what that culture survey shows in a bit more detail. And then really then the next few steps is about supporting the improvement and linking it to clinical interventions. But what we're also doing at the same time is developing the leadership within organizations. And we're doing that. I'll skip over that, actually. No, let's go back. We're doing that by taking core groups of clinical leaders from each organization and taking them through a process together to help them understand how we can support and develop teams to move their cultures in more positive directions. So it's not about developing the individuals. It's not about getting you better at being operational leaders. It's about getting you better at working together as these sort of quadumvirates. So your lead neonatologist, your lead obstetrician, your lead midwife, and your lead sort of service level manager in a way that we don't think has been done as effectively before. And the first couple of groups that we've taken through this process are finding this really, really enabling and very positive. And then that then flows into this sort of 5-6 month process of going through the safety culture surveys, the debriefing, and developing your action planning. Some of this is an example of one of the radar plots you get out of the culture survey tool that we use, and thinking about some of the more common issues that we will see around communication breakdown, struggling to work with other work settings and dealing with difficult colleagues. And all of these will derail effective team working in a way that we probably can all recognize, particularly when you're trying to work in the area of optimization of preterm babies, where it's so important that we integrate well with both our approaches, our thinking, and our outcomes between the neonatal unit, the delivery suite, and even between organizations when we're thinking about place of birth. We've done some work using an appreciative inquiry approach to understand what sort of cultural values underpin high-performing teams. And some of that we will be publishing in the next couple of months in BMJ Safety and Quality. But you can break what you need to do down into these 6 sort of buckets effectively to look at how you can improve the way that we work. But what we're also trying to do is not just think about what the technical interventions might be, and I've used safety huddles here as an example, because we probably all recognize what safety huddles are, but do we recognize how we can get the most out of safety huddles by thinking about the kind of competencies, materials, and meanings that you need to make them work, but equally the cultural values that are being enacted to make them high functioning. So there's a big difference between making sure you've got all the right people in the room versus actually when they're in the room, how do they interact with each other? How do they behave? How do they support the work that they're trying to do? And when you start thinking about the humanistic elements, the relational aspects of culture, that's when you really start to get significant improvement in the way that these interventions actually support clinical teams. So rather than just dragging and dropping into a new environment, thinking about why you're doing it, and actually when you're in that space, how you can start to work better. And the work that we'll be doing as we go forward will try and support that, which I think will therefore feed in to supporting this piece of work that BAPM are really focusing on. And just to finish, another way of thinking about this is certainly this is one of the tools that another group, Each Baby Counts Learn and Support, have developed to try and support effective management or optimize the way that we escalate and respond to deterioration. And again, this is something that we see time and time again within and between clinical teams. This intervention is called Teach or Treat, which basically allows you to look at the way that you interact when you raise an element of or concern about either a mother, a baby, or a baby in labor. But actually, it's built on a bedrock of cultural competency. So there's no point trying to drop this intervention into a space if the way in which we communicate isn't civil. There isn't an expectation that these conversations are done in a compassionate and caring way, that we don't ensure that we're involving the mother and the family in any of the conversations and the reason behind them. And all of those things we can start to embody and example through the implementation of interventions like this. So we don't have to have a civility running through every person in the whole organization before you can start doing other technical interventions. You can start to actually embody the way that we need to behave through these small pieces of improvement. And then once we start getting experience of how well they work, it then spreads into other areas of what we're doing. So I think what I'm trying to sort of show you is that there's a wider piece of culture and leadership development being done across perinatal services, but it bleeds into some of the more specific elements that we hopefully are highlighting in this framework to support optimization of preterm babies. Hopefully I haven't run over too far, so thanks for listening.
That is lovely. Your timekeeping is absolutely perfect, Tony, and so interesting that when you talk about the fact that almost you just have to start asking the questions within an environment, start talking about it, and then you start getting that ripple effect and change starts to happen. So thank you very much. And now I would like to introduce, although I have to say, Julie Claire Becker, though I have to say for most of you, she will need absolutely no introduction. She has spearheaded the number of improvement programs across the UK, even to things when you're doing your PMRT. Julie Claire was at the core of that. So she has worked on improvement programs in Scotland. She's been absolutely instrumental and leading and coordinating the whole perinatal optimisation toolkits within BAPM, and then went on to realise that we can't get this right until we sort out our teams. So I'm absolutely delighted to introduce Julie Claire to talk about successful perinatal teams and the BAPM work that she has led.
Thank you very much, Cora, for that really kind introduction. And I just hasten to add that in all of these pieces of work, it's been a huge team that have been fantastic in helping us deliver on these pieces of work. And they've come from the BAPM membership in large part. So it's you being part of these pieces of work which really makes it happen. Can you see my slides?
Yes, we can. Yeah.
Thank you very much. It was great to hear Amy at the beginning there, really setting the scene with the parent perspective and how important it is to put parents at the heart of our care, but also at the heart of our service development and our quality improvement and our safety culture. And I'm hoping that when you read through this document, which gives me great pleasure to introduce, having been published yesterday, that you'll get a sense of how important it is that parents are really, and their babies are at the heart of everything that we do in terms of trying to improve our culture and context so that we can deliver the best care. So Tony has spoken already about the Perinatal Optimisation Care Pathway, and I think you'll all be very familiar by now with this diagram, which really just represents a sequence of events, a sequence of interventions which are evidence-based, that should happen when a woman presents in preterm labour or when she's a planned preterm birth, to try and improve preterm outcomes. And the BAPM over the last few years has developed these 4 toolkits, which are really quality improvement toolkits, setting down the principles of how you would tackle improving delivery of these interventions in your own setting. And we have our antenatal optimization toolkit, optimal cord management, improving normothermia, and early maternal breast milk. But really from the very start in developing these toolkits, it became apparent to everyone within the working group that it wasn't just about rolling out a quality improvement project, that culture was so integral to being able to do this successfully. It's the difference really between why there is such variability if you look at the National Neonatal Audit Programme results in things like admission normothermia. Why is it that some units who are using radiant heat and a plastic wrap are only managing to bring in babies 50% of the time who are normothermic, whereas others are doing it 100% of the time? And it all really boils down to culture. And so we wanted to develop some resources which would really help people start to think about their culture, assess their own culture, and identify areas in which they may feel it important to develop so that we could more successfully deliver these interventions. And so we partnered with the MATNEA SIP programme in developing this resource. And we started off with parents as part of that working group. Amy's already described how important it is that we listen to parents' voices, listen to their experience, and use their very unique experience to help us guide what we do. We had members from the Perinatal Optimisation Team, and by that I mean midwives, neonatologists, obstetricians, neonatal nurses, anaesthetists from all levels of unit, transport teams, and we involved trainees as well as the clinicians of the future. And we had representation and or consultation from HSIB, the National Transport Group, PeriPrem, and the National Neonatal Palliative Care Project. The resource is split into two sections, and I'm going to go through both of these just now. The first one is really about discovery. It's assessing your context and culture. And Tony's touched on already the really valuable contribution that SCORE surveys do, or other culture surveys, for example, the one that the Scottish Patient Safety Programme rolled out in 2015. And there may be other safety cultures that your own department or your own hospital use as well. And that gives you quite a wide overview of what's going on. But sometimes there are times when it's essential to have a little bit more granularity. And I want you to think a little bit about how you might get that intelligence within your own department. So how else might you get information about culture? So have a moment or two to think about that. So as well as culture surveys, the working group felt that it was really important to look at the feedback and surveys from parents and families and from trainees. And think about as well, when you're delivering your QI program on any of the perinatal optimization metrics, when you're process mapping that, well, what are the barriers? Why is it that it's difficult if a baby is delivered in theatre to keep that baby warm? There's this conflict, isn't there, between operator comfort and the goals of the neonatal team. Thinking about how culture can be a barrier, but can also be a facilitator. So you might want to look at audit and your data in there too. And there are also miscellaneous mechanisms as well. What about your preterm birth adverse events or case reviews? Are there things in that come out around communication, around pathways, shared goals? What about external reviews, recruitment, retention rates, staff feedback boards and questionnaires, more sort of informal methods of gaining data, gaining intelligence around culture and context? And this diagram, which Tony put together, is a really good way of thinking about it. So that we start with this discovery section here, where we use sort of the higher level culture surveys, but add in your local intelligence, thinking about the perinatal optimization pathway and where there are areas of low reliability within that. And identifying themes that around your culture and your quality context that you want to improve, and then developing specific improvement plans or wider cultural interventions that help to address that so that we're more reliably getting it right for every patient every time. Section 2 of the resource is actually helping units and departments and services and networks find solutions and continue on the improvement work from there onwards. And we based this around 6 different themes, which have been taken from the NHS England work, but also the neonatal standards and quality indicators work that my lovely dear colleague Gopi Menon published back in 2018. And there are 6 themes that involve leadership, person-centred pathways of care, team working and positive communication, continuous learning, audit, benchmarking and research, and capability and capacity for quality improvement. And under each of these themes, we present a number of activities that we encourage multidisciplinary teams, ideally the perinatal optimization team, to undertake. We suggest some solutions, but also encourage you to find your own solutions for your own local problem. And then there are a large number of improvement stories which have been sent in from around the country of people who've been doing some really successful work in this area. And I want to further develop this by looking at the theme of effective team working, shared goals, and positive communication. So, for example, here in activities, in a sort of a generic way, coming together as a multidisciplinary team to think about each other's roles and skills together. What do you know about your colleagues' day-to-day working? What challenges do they face? It's quite fun to write down a diary of what you think that their working week or even the working day might look like, and then compare that between you both or between you all to understand what they do, what they don't understand about your job, what would be helpful for them to know or understand. And there's a great website or a great movement called At Whose Shoes, which has taken off really well. It's actually a tool for us to understand best how parents and patients experience healthcare. But it can also be used between teams as well. And we encourage people to maybe explore whether or not that would be useful in their setting or not. And then also, what do women and families say about how your teams work? I found that particularly within our own service that there are distinct elements of culture that can be distilled from that feedback and complaints, usually around communication or pathways of care. It may be helpful to draw a relationship diagram where you draw lines between the people who you interact with and describe those relationships as weak or strong or complex, and try and understand best what makes a relationship strong. And can you use that understanding to try and bolster those that are weak or more complex? And that's a really useful activity to undertake as a team. And then thinking about preterm birth and preterm optimization in particular, identify and review recent episodes of teaming. So teaming is where teams come together in very urgent or acute situations to solve problems quickly. And that can often be the case when women come in and precipitate preterm birth. Think about what went well in that situation, what could be better, was communication optimal, and what things do you need next time round, whether it be knowledge or training, skills, to function better next time. And ask yourselves together, do you have a shared goal, shared mental model around perinatal optimization? So do all staff, are they all working to the same goal? Are some staff more focused on the mother, some more focused on the baby? Some are actually focused on getting home because their child has another hospital appointment. Some are interested in adverse events, or some just keeping harmony, making sure the team are working well together. So it's important to explore those kind of different goals and understand best why they may differ. When we come to thinking about the solutions, well, we really strongly encourage you to find your own solutions, but the principles for solutions and effective team working and shared goals and positive communication really boil down to four things. Fostering a habit of non-hierarchical relationships, and that's so that staff in all areas, whether that's from within the network but outside your hospital, or whether it's within your team, can access specialist advice 24/7. It's about having shared pathways of care, shared understandings, and psychological safety. About growing an awareness of team roles and doing that through shared activities such as shared ward round, shared teaching. Establishing shared goals, like as I said previously, so that everybody is working towards the same goal when a woman comes in preterm labour. And training all staff to a high level of skill and situational awareness, whether that be through simulation or shared teaching, etc. And so within this theme of effective team working, shared goals and positive communication, you may want to implement structured handovers, such as using SBAR for communicating clinical concerns. You might want, as Tony said, to implement daily safety huddles to discuss women at risk of preterm birth, or routine pre-briefs for preterm births, where the team stands together before a woman delivers and discusses what the goals are and what everybody's roles are. But it may also include having MDT meetings for complex cases and counselling and discussions about births less than 27 weeks. You may want to employ multidisciplinary debriefs for extreme preterm births at which there is a gap analysis and identification of improvement goals. But as Tony said, it's not just about the practical solutions. It's not just, okay, we're going to deal with that bit of culture by introducing an SBAR or introducing a daily safety huddle. And I think Tony's been really key in my understanding about improving culture in his talk about this, and how about the humanistic factors, as he said. It's about the values being enacted during those episodes. The openness, the collegiality, the inclusivity, the caring and the compassion that we show. And we have to get really good at fostering those kind of behaviours within each of those kind of episodes. And there are a lot of resources that the toolkit points to. So we're not just suggesting those episodes, but we're backing that up with a lot of additional help and additional support. For example, here within this theme, we have got the PeriPerm team talking about the importance of perinatal team working and how that's done in a way that is compassionate and collegial. We've got speakers in psychological safety who've given TED Talks on this. And there's obviously the Civility Saves Lives website, which is a huge number of resources. We also have introduced some best practice principles for perinatal team meetings, not just the where and the when, but also the behaviours that are really important to model during those episodes. And some pointers on developing good communication culture, how to rephrase the sort of automatic reflex language that comes out when we're particularly stressed or where capacity is low, and trying to rephrase that in a way that fosters collegiality within the team. So this is only one of the themes that of the 6 that are included in the resource, and I encourage you, if you've not already, to have a look at the other areas of this, and just to explore whether or not these are provide solutions or provide activities which would be useful in you helping within your team or your the perinatal team or within your hospital or within your network, and really trying to understand how best to improve the safety culture and the quality culture so that we can more reliably deliver those interventions to improve preterm outcomes. As well as the practical solutions, we have a number of improvement stories, as I've said. And so I'm going to leave this section now and go back to Cora and ask her to introduce some of the fantastic improvement stories which we've been able to use within this resource. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Julie Claire, for that absolutely inspirational talk, which I hope will drive everybody to go straight to read the document and start thinking about how they can introduce things on their own units. And I particularly love the concept of the shared mental model and how that, you know, is effective in breaking down and silos and getting people to work together. And of course, one of the things that is great is getting teams to work together, not just as, say, at medical student and midwifery student level, which would be fantastic and happening in some places, but also at trainee level. And I'm delighted to introduce Leah Mitaraki, who is a paediatric trainee in North London and who has got a very good interest in perinatal medicine, having undertaken an MSc in embryology at Oxford. So without further ado, Leah, I'd be grateful if you could come and talk about your work with trainees and obstetric and neonatal teams.
Hi, my name is Leah Mitaraki and I'm a pediatric trainee in Northwest London Deanery. ONIT stands for Obstetric Neonatal Interest Teaching, and it is a Northwest London perinatal study day. The idea derived from a phrase I once heard while I was talking to some other junior pediatric doctors. During my training, I've never had any combined teaching about the things I see and hear in the delivery room and in maternity meetings every day. This made me want to create an opportunity that will bridge the gap between prenatal and postnatal care, that will promote a healthy collaboration based on basic knowledge of each other's specialty, thus building stronger and more successful perinatal teams. ONIT is a multidisciplinary perinatal study day across Northwest London hospitals. It is targeted to all involved in perinatal care, pediatric, neonatal, and obstetric trainees of all grades, and aesthetic trainees interested in obstetric anesthesia, and midwives. On it involves a set of 20 to 40-minute talks on topics that cover all the journey from preconception up until after delivery. What is unique about On It is that the topics are practical and based on real scenarios that have happened in maternity wards, labor theatres, and neonatal units across the country. On It is delivered by specialists in their fields who have a passion to share the knowledge and improve perinatal care. The focus of the idea is to improve knowledge in perinatal medicine, to build effective perinatal teams, and to underline the importance of multidisciplinary approach in improving neonatal outcomes. A certificate of completion was provided to all participants, which they could add to their portfolio. The project was welcomed by all. Results showed that all participants enjoyed the day and would highly recommend it to their colleagues in the future. The general feedback was excellent. Participants said they enjoyed learning with each other and from each other, and that the topics covered were very interesting and useful for their clinical roles. Aspects of culture we focused on are recognizing the role that each one of us play, creating an open invitation to cross-specialty MDT learning, and being open-minded and knowledgeable of each other's specialties that affect the care that we provide on our own field. Barriers we had to overcome include leading a project that runs across different hospitals and trusts that required exquisite organizational, managerial, and leadership skills. Moreover, the COVID-19 pandemic made the launching of On It even harder. But everyone welcomed this idea. Moving forwards, I recommend that this project is implemented in other hospital affiliations and networks. On It can be promoted by BAPM as a toolkit for perinatal optimization, since it has been proven to improve communication, teamwork, and cross-specialty learning, thus building stronger and more successful perinatal teams.
Thank you very much, Leah, for that presentation, and I hope that everybody is now going to be on it from now on. Great to see teams working together. I'd now like to introduce Amitava Soor. Amitava is a neonatologist at East Lancashire NHS Trust, and Amitava is passionate about perinatal optimisation and quality improvement, and has been intrinsically involved in some of the perinatal toolkits, and also on the perinatal teams programme for BAPM. So without further ado, Amitava is going to start to talk about some quality improvement work at the local hospital.
Thanking Julie Claire and the BAPM for providing us with this opportunity to highlight a brief overview of the perinatal work culture at the Lancashire Women and Newborn Centre. For this brief presentation, we shall try and focus on the collaborative aspect of the MDT element. Essentially, the work tries to align with the maternity transformation program, with obstetric and the neonatal safety champions keeping an overview of the different work streams led by dedicated subgroups for joint representation. The three main focus elements for our collaborative efforts are a preterm optimization, improving communication and planning through joint clinics and MDT meets, and a robust governance structure. And these align well with the current national drivers. Each of these areas have dedicated leads from the neonatal, obstetric, and the midwifery teams, and when required, task and finish groups for specific projects. We shall focus more on the optimization journey, which started with the setting up of the delivery room care bundle in 2018, initially focusing on optimal cord management and then intensifying the actions around normothermia, and eventually making sure that a sustenance phase is reached for all these QI initiatives and demonstrating a high compliance and improvement. The pandemic obviously threw a spanner in the works and provided us with new challenges, but the team tried their best to continue the improvement journey, making modifications for human factors during the pandemic, and embedding these new changes through multiple MDT simulations. And emerging from that, we are looking at more towards strengthening collaborative efforts at all levels. Going digital has been exciting as well as quite a challenge, with the neonatal and the maternity EPRs phasing in at different time periods. leading to data discrepancies. However, now with a dedicated IT midwife and a dedicated neonatal IT nurse, we are looking at producing more distilled data and feeding back to the network dashboard in case of any data discrepancies. This is allowing us to understand our optimization metrics better. Optimization data around areas of cord management and normothermia has thankfully shown promising progress and sustained improvement, with our optimal cord management rates being consistently some of the highest in the region. And it has been made possible through the last few years with an incredibly supportive obstetric and midwifery team and a lot of collaborative simulation and education sessions. So the overarching challenges that we have encountered around has been around dedicated time and space for obstetric and neonatal colleagues to meet and discuss and collaborate on these projects. There has been obviously an ongoing confusion about the various national programs and drivers which often overlap with each other. There's always a chance of missing out on reporting of one area and duplication of the work done, which is in a continuous process of being sorted out. The data, as we mentioned, issues with the maternity and the neonatal BAPM and the EPR led to difficulties in data retrieval and input, which is again being streamlined as we progress. And on the shop floor, there has been a process, a difficulty to enable a daily perinatal communication in the form of handovers and exchange of clinical information, and that has also been a challenge in the daily business of our work. So for 2023 and beyond, if we go back to those three areas of the focus elements that we spoke of at the beginning, the plans for the future would be to have a joint oversight and leadership and have common board discussions and meetings, enabling a crosstalk between the EPRs and ensuring that a clear flow of information is available to the clinical teams, to have put in processes like having neonatal representatives in obstetric handovers and vice versa, and to continue improving on the optimization journey, auditing missed opportunities, and undertake more joint audits and QI projects focused on these areas. To strengthen this, our team has just attended the NHSC Culture and Leadership Training, and one of the plans from that has been to relaunch the Culture Score Survey. But the most important message at the core of this, I guess, that the best place to start to make any start for any improvement is to bring the conversation to one room for optimal care. And that has been what we have been striving for as a team in the last few years. I hope this provides an overview of the way we are working. And thank you again for BAPM for allowing us the opportunity to speak. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Amitava, for coming to speak to us today about the work in your local hospital. And it's amazing to see it. And I particularly like the concept of the one room. And of course, you've raised the important issue of the importance for having very, very good metrics, but also having to be allowed to have the space and the capacity to be able to collect the data and carry out the projects. And so looking at you talking about the neonatal and obstetric representation together, it is opportune, therefore, to introduce Claire Eagleton, who is Deputy Director of Midwifery at Shrewsbury and Telford, and she is going to talk to us about obstetric and neonatal, maternity and neonatal champions and the Improve Well app. So you're very welcome, Claire, this afternoon.
Hello. My name is Claire Eagleton, and I'm the Deputy Director of Midwifery at the Shrewsbury and Telford Hospital NHS Trust. I am presenting this on behalf of my team to talk about how we've implemented a number of initiatives to help build successful perinatal teams. One of those initiatives is Maternity and Neonatal Safety Champions. There is a national ambition to make measurable improvements in safety outcomes for women, babies and their families who receive care from maternity and neonatal services. Safety champions have been introduced to work on a national, local and trust level to promote a culture in which better care can be delivered to these women, babies and families, which is safe and evidence-based. Maternity and neonatal services have worked together well for many years. Joint working between maternity and neonatal services and also a trust board level team has been formalised in recent years to ensure that safety issues are highlighted, investigated and escalated appropriately to the trust board. Representatives of safety champions include consultants, both obstetricians, anaesthetists and neonatologists, midwives, representatives from the ICB and Maternity Voices Partnership, as well as a trust board level membership. There are bi-monthly safety champion walkarounds. These happen in different clinical areas and they're an opportunity for staff to raise safety concerns directly with the group. A key summary AAA report is produced following the meeting, which is then used to inform other committees within the Trust. The benefits we have found of maternity and neonatal safety champions include that we have found it removes hierarchy. When the walkabouts are undertaken, all members of staff have the opportunity to speak to the group and raise any concerns that they may have. This allows for all staff voices to be heard. There is clear communication with staff around the resolution of their safety concerns, as is demonstrated in the poster on the left-hand side of this slide. Following a Safety Champions meeting, a You Said We Did communication is produced. On the left-hand side of the poster are the safety concerns which staff have raised, and on the right-hand side of the poster is what the group has helped to implement to ensure that these have been addressed. It promotes psychological safety, as staff are aware that their voices can be heard and they have a route of escalation for any safety concerns that they may have. And it also strengthens close collaboration between the maternity and neonatal teams who work together to address any safety concerns and also any improvements that are identified. The second initiative which we have introduced is a digital platform called ImproveWell, which is an app that is designed to provide an avenue to increase staff engagement and boost morale. It has 4 main features: a sentiment tracker, an idea hub, the ability to send pulse surveys, and also push notifications. The outputs that we have seen from ImproveWell is we have over 200 staff registered with the platform. 158 ideas have been submitted by staff that benefit not only themselves, their teams, but also our service users. 86 of those ideas have been fully implemented, and examples of these ideas include additional translator services via a digital platform, easier logins to digital systems, light projectors in some of our birth rooms, new curtains, new keyboards and other new equipment that has been identified that would increase staff satisfaction and also their ability to provide care. The app is used for staff surveys, and quarterly feedback results have demonstrated significant improvements in staff feeling that their voices can be heard and that improvement ideas that they have are actioned. We have faced a number of challenges implementing these new initiatives. These included the fact that we are a large geographical area and have outlying units. Also, we have the significant clinical pressures and staffing challenges and a degree of staff apathy and change fatigue following a number of changes implemented over recent years. Overall benefits that we have seen from these initiatives are improved engagement from all staff groups, a feeling of renewed trust that ideas and concerns will be acted upon, improved team working between both maternity and neonatal services, our senior leadership, including our board members, role modelling positive behaviours, a clear focus around culture within the division, leading to staff feeling that they have more psychological safety and that they are able to have their voices heard. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Claire, for that excellent presentation, and really great to see how you've really improved the levels of psychological safety within your organisation. And it was particularly interesting to see the improved engagement of senior leadership, which is so important for part of high quality and high reliability within organisations. So thank you very much for sharing that. We're now going to move over to Leah again, Leah Mitaraki, from trainee from North London, talking to us about the neonatal nurse shadowing programme. So welcome again, Leah.
Hi, my name is Leah Mitaraki and I'm a pediatric trainee in Northwest London Deanery. The Neonatal Nurse Shadowing Programme is a project idea focusing on building successful perinatal teams by encouraging communication, teamwork, and bidirectional learning opportunities amongst neonatal doctors and nurses. The project was tailored for neonatal doctors and helped them gain practical skills on nursing tasks, understand the work that neonatal nurses do, build stronger relationships amongst the team, and improve neonatal care in general. The project ran over 6 months in Chelsea and Westminster Hospital neonatal unit, where the junior doctors would shadow a neonatal nurse for a full day. The day agenda was created after discussion with the nursing colleagues and neonatal unit matron. A list of suggested nursing competencies was developed and adjusted to the nature of this tertiary unit, which covers both medical and surgical cases. Our applicants submitted a pre-shadowing and post-shadowing questionnaire with the aim to collect data on their interest of participation and their feedback, as well as their baseline knowledge on nursing tasks. A certificate of completion was provided to all participants, which they could add to their portfolio. The project was welcomed by all. Results showed that all participants enjoyed the day and would strongly recommend it to their colleagues in the future. The general feedback was excellent. As junior doctors, we rotate through hospitals too often, and by the time we meet new colleagues, we have to rotate again. Aspects of culture we focused on via these projects was organizational culture, teamwork, communication, respect for each other's role, and creating a sense of belonging. Barriers we had to overcome include the allocation of slots to doctors whilst ensuring that the rota is safe, all shifts are covered, and patient safety is prioritized. Sickness, annual study leave dates, but also COVID isolation rules made the coordination challenging. However, everyone welcomed this project to the unit. Moving forwards, I recommend that this project is implemented in other level 2 and 3 neonatal units across the country. The NNSP could be extended to other healthcare professionals as well, such as midwives. Also, a great initiative is to do the opposite. For example, call neonatal nurses to shadow doctors for a day. Moreover, the NNSP can be actively supported by family integrated care teams, since in that way junior doctors get the chance to step out of their strictly clinical role and support families alongside nurses. In general, the NNSP can be promoted by BAPM as a toolkit for perinatal optimization, since it has been proven to improve communication and trust amongst doctors and nurses, thus building stronger and more successful perinatal teams.
Leah, for presenting that and for really demonstrating whose shoes in action. And I'm just thinking there must be lots of trainees out there thinking of PhDs. So think about improvement PhDs or culture PhDs or quality PhDs. Now, lastly, and by no means least, I'd like to introduce George Brooks. George is Assistant Professor of Midwifery at Northumbria University, but previously was a neonatal nurse consultant, having spent 30 years working in neonatal care. So delighted to introduce George to come and talk to us about the fact that perinatal optimization is everyone's business. Thank you, George.
Hello, my name is George Brooks. Until recently, I was one of the lead professionals for neonatal care at Northumbria Healthcare Foundation NHS Trust, and with the head of midwifery was a maternity and neonatal safety champion. I'd like to talk to you today about one innovation that helped promote cohesion between the neonatal nursing, paediatric medical, midwifery, and obstetric medical teams trust-wide in the strive to optimise preterm birth locally. In terms of context, it's probably worth explaining where we are. As the most northern maternity service in England, we cover a vast geographical area. We deliver over 3,000 babies at the consultant-led site each year, and this has resulted in our Level 1 Special Care ANNP-led unit becoming the busiest special care unit in our region. Conventional medical cover is provided in 2 tiers, namely advanced neonatal nurse practitioners working as middle grade clinicians who are supported by consultant general paediatricians. There is no tier 1. This model has been in place since 1995, termed the Ashington model, and has been well evaluated. Initially, we just wanted to look at a way of introducing recommendations of the Prevention of Cerebral Palsy in Preterm Labour project, the PRECEPT project. But we soon realised that we needed to be more broad in our approach if we were to get the other components of perinatal optimisation right. Our aims were to look at ways in which to maintain compliance to our established, robust intrauterine transfer pathway, to offer care of demonstrable benefit wherever possible, prior or during an intrauterine transfer, and to provide good care in those infrequent incidences when IUT could not be possible. The midwifery workforce within the Trust is predominantly stable, but in common with most maternity units, we work with an ever-changing team of obstetric trainees, many of which have never worked in a district general hospital maternity service, so require support to deliver optimisation within our care setting. Communicating how we should deliver the components of the Perinatal Optimisation Care Pathway by discussion during in-service skills drills or by the usual process of sharing updated and revised guidelines, failed to provide enough information as to the rationale underpinning our gestational specific care options. A workbook was introduced for all obstetric, midwifery and neonatal unit staff to inform them of interventions that should be considered and offered to maximise the health potential of the preterm infant. This has since been developed into a short e-learning model on our Trust's Learning and Development site. We focused upon making perinatal optimisation everyone's business. We wanted to ensure all midwifery, neonatal and obstetric teams were aware of the broad principles of optimisation and their specific responsibilities pertaining to the issues of preterm birth. We aim to make it user-friendly, so it has lots of illustrations to support the accompanying text. Assessment of learning was thought to be important, and a short MCQ test concludes the package. One effective part of the package was the localization of the available data as to the benefit of perinatal optimisation. And an example on this slide where we discussed how if every eligible preterm baby admitted to Northumberland's neonatal unit had benefited from maternal magnesium sulfate, we would have prevented 2 cases of cerebral palsy each year locally. The training package was well received, but some professionals, namely the community midwives, did not fully appreciate their part in perinatal optimisation. Upon reflection, we believe that more should have been done to address this during its introduction by providing more specific examples of how this professional group may impact on the perinatal optimisation journey. Interest in the book could be variable, but now that it is in electronic format, it is easier to include it and to monitor its completion for all professional groups via their mandatory training plan. How it's affected our team culture? Well, I do think it has improved our team culture and moved us forward, as there is now an improved shared responsibility for perinatal optimisation. Providing learning materials which provided the rationale for interventions became a driver for improvement as teams engaged more with them, and once they had a more detailed appreciation of the benefit, they worked towards a more shared goal. The sense of perinatal community of practice has aided further innovation, such as the comprehensive antenatal colostrum harvesting policy that's been introduced, as well as other further cross-team projects.
So thank you very much, George, for that interesting presentation, and great to see the whole team working together and how it's everybody's business. And again, going back to the whose shoes, learning that everybody plays a role and that it's important to understand what other people's roles are in the business. And fantastic to see the e-learning. So that is the end of our presentations, these all fantastic presentations, which are really, really motivating and stimulating, and I hope really will drive people back to implementing this and working with teams and culture in their own perinatal settings. So without further ado, then, I think we are going to open the floor. Either you can put questions into the chat or put your hand up. I think we have the facility to be able to take that and we will look to see if there are any hands up. And hopefully, Marcus, you can guide me.
Laura, I think Karen Lloyd has put in a reflection, which is also sort of a question, and that's about how do we get trust to value, fund more time for perinatal teams to meet and learn together. And she points out in the precept evaluation, this shared time learning was highlighted as vital for improvement in care. I think it's a really important point, really crucial, and interestingly, we dealt with that in the Teams Toolkit under the first section of leadership, and actually we propose a model to improve trust engagement in perinatal optimization through sort of dual dialogue between teams and trust safety champions, highlighting the importance of perinatal optimization, signposting them, encouraging them to attend national meetings and programs, being aware of the programs that are in place for that. It's not the answer, the full answer, but it's certainly starting to have that communication backwards and forwards. I think is very important, making sure that it's the trust perinatal quality surveillance model includes perinatal optimizations, highly important too.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with you there. And I think it's something, and Karen will know this, that Tim Draycott often talks about space for training. And if we think about, say, a Formula One race and the pit stop, which is like a resuscitation, teams practice that pit stop 120 times for every Formula One race, and yet we're expected to walk in and rock up and all work together as a team. Or if you think of a sports team, they practice and practice and brief and debrief. And I think we've really got to get that way of working coming into medicine as well. We like a sports team, our performance will depend on how well we practice together. So I think Narendra, sorry, Tony, yeah.
I was going to say there's probably a couple of other things to add there. I think the point you made about practice is very interesting. I remember talking to Sarah Bates around the issue of optical cord management, and it's one of those things that we talk a lot about. There's clearly there are some cultural issues there, particularly I think from obstetricians who feel uncomfortable about that as a process, even with good neonatal support in the moment. But actually the practicalities and what that looks like and how the whole process will run in that sort of pit stop mentality isn't something we necessarily rehearse as teams. And I think actually a lot of our team training, if you look at it, is reflective of what the harms were years ago, not necessarily of what the benefits of working collaboratively together now more frequently need to include. So I think that's one element of it. I think also making space for conversation about the impact of the work is probably the one of the easier ways forward. And certainly the optimization work now, including the expanded bundle, in line with some of the work that Karen has led in PeriPrem, will be part of Saving Babies' Lives version 3 that will come out next month. So for the English trusts, there will be an expectation that we'll be looking on our reliability of delivering some of these elements. And therefore, it's not just about talking about when things have gone wrong, but actually celebrating when things are going well. And that appreciative inquiry element, so celebrating, wow, wasn't that brilliant? We've managed to do optical cord manage for all these babies this week, which then meant that actually they arrived in the unit warmer. And, we start to celebrate those successes and recycle them. And then ultimately, on a quarterly basis, you start wanting to understand whether that's shifting outcome. And I think it's those types of positive conversations that then start to drive those spaces better. But I think we have to create the need for them. So I think there's a cycle we can go around.
Yeah, absolutely. So it is about space and time. Yeah. Thanks, Tony. So I think Narendra, you have your hand up. Do you want to?
Thank you, Chair, and thanks to all speakers. Excellent meeting, webinar. My question is to Amy, a parent representative in the group. Would you, Amy, mind to tell in practical terms your involvement, whether you advise the consultant or involve helping the parents, those kind of what you did or what are you doing practically so that we could implement in our unit?
So I was more behind the scenes, and I did, I kind of tried to explain how I felt during that time, because I don't think a lot of people realise, but you actually do mourn a pregnancy, and it sounds really silly because your baby is like, in your eyes it's okay, it's fighting, but you mourn a lot of things, and I don't think people realise that you do mourn. So I think it was more to share that my side of it was to basically help the parents, and let them know that how you're feeling is okay, and if you feel like you don't want to do anything. So like when I had Lily, I did not want to touch her, and because it scared me, and I didn't want to break her, I didn't want to change her nappy, I didn't want to check that the fluid in her stomach. I didn't want to do any of that because, one, it's a whole new world for me anyway. I was 19 when I had her, so it was scary enough, but then obviously on top of that you've got all the the preterm and the premature things you have to deal with, and all the scary loopholes you have to go through. So I definitely think I got involved because I wanted to help, and to let other parents know that how you're feeling is okay, it's normal. And then obviously I wanted to help the consultants and the doctors and the midwives and the nurses, one, to let them know that they all do a very good job, they're very good, but there is other things that they can improve on, and it's okay for us parents to say, like, maybe you should do this, or maybe, because I think sometimes you kind of feel like you're at the bottom of the chart. I'm not gonna lie, and you do feel like you're not really going to be listened to because you have a degree and we don't. Do you get what I mean? So it's like, it's really hard, but I think I just wanted to just put out there that it is okay to say how you would want things done. You don't have to. So like, to me, at the start, I was very pressured into doing things, and not like it wasn't like meanly pressured, but it was, come on, you should change your nappy, or come on, you should do this, come on, you should do that. But I wasn't ready. And I stood up for myself and I said, no, I will come to you when I'm ready to do that. And I think some parents don't feel that they can say that because you're scared you're going to get judged. So I wanted to help on that side of things as well. But yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Julie, Claire, you've got your hand up.
Thank you, Amy, for describing that. It's really interesting, and the work that you did on the passport as well was so important. I just wanted to say to Narendra that we've very recently become quite successful in engaging 5 sets of parents, or 5 parents, in our improvement work, and that's after 2-3 years of really trying to get parents to respond to invitations and that we've had. And what's happened in the last 3 months actually is they've become a really fantastic group. It includes mums and it includes dads. It's quite a diverse group, and they have commented on lots of antenatal leaflets. They've contributed to some research questions that we've had. They're joining, each of them are joining one of our improvement projects that's going on in the unit, whether that's family care or perinatal optimisation or reducing BPD, and they're super keen to be involved. And actually we're currently looking at the process of remunerating them for their time. And Amy, I don't necessarily want you to share if you're getting any kind of remuneration at all, but that's one of the aspects that we put through in the resource, actually, is for units to consider remunerating parents for their time, their expenses, and so on in joining these meetings.
I have been paid back for my time twice, actually. I've had it twice now, I think I can't even remember when I started getting involved in parenting. I think it was the first lockdown, I think. I don't know what year that was, all the years of mumbled together. But I got paid for that. And then I also I've been given like vouchers for shops of my choice and things like that. And I think it does then make you feel like you have achieved something, because they see something in you, because they've given you time back. I think sometimes you do feel a little bit lost as a parent, because you don't understand everything that they're saying. You don't understand all these big complicated words, and you do feel a little bit like, should I even be here? Am I even helping? But then obviously when you get the compliments and you get asked to do more, well, I'm not saying I get asked, I get kind of just chosen by Sarah, but I don't mind. And so yeah, it is nice that clearly I kind of know what I'm talking about, I guess.
Thank you so much, Amy. That's amazing. Any questions from anybody else? Any comments? I know we are due to finish at 2:15, but we were happy to extend. I think there's lots of positive feedback in the chat. So anybody else? Marcus or Kate, can you see anybody? I can only see a certain number of hands. Is there anybody else with a hand up? Narendra, is that a new hand from you?
Chair, am I okay to ask the second question to
You
Julie
can ask
this time?
Yes.
Julie, could you please highlight, you highlighted the positive culture. Could you highlight in your research experience or hands-on experience, what we should avoid or what are the negative cultures? What should we avoid? I know positive cultures you mentioned. Or maybe Tony, I don't know who, either you or Tony could tell us.
Or Julie Claire want to take that, but I would say that one, you just start. It's about, in a way, I suppose, avoiding. It's not about avoiding negative culture. How do you avoid it? By bringing change in culture and bringing in a positive culture and reframing how we speak to people. And it's really about valuing everybody at work. And I think once people feel valued and they feel listened to, whether that's a parent or a staff member, that starts the ball rolling and creates a ripple effect. So even if it starts with one person, I think being positive about things, and always, I'd say, always try and look at things from somebody else's perspective when you're listening. What's going on for them? That for me would be the start of any cultural change. I don't know if Julie Claire or Tony.
It's an interesting. Sorry, on you go, Tony.
No, you go first.
I think it's an interesting question, and I think it comes. You'll discover that yourself when you get your surveys and you look at your data and you look at your themes. It will become apparent to you what the cultures are in your department that are not necessarily bad cultures, but they're preventing you from moving forward and preventing you from being successful. And it's important to not be put off by the fact that you've got to get to good culture. I mean, I think that journey sometimes seems so impossible for people to do. And we were very lucky during the consultation period to have the head of British Cycling comment on the toolkit. And he was very complimentary, but he gave us some feedback, which is actually, you're not trying to change culture, you're trying to steer it. And I think if we bear that in mind, it then becomes it feels a lot more possible to start shifting attitudes and start shifting beliefs into behaviors that we really value and that we know will make a difference and that we can show can make a difference.
I would completely echo that, and the whole point is this is a very dynamic construct. So it's not that I always use the relational, going back to something like fitness. You're either gaining or losing fitness. It's never static, and culture is super dynamic. And so one of the things I think we need to aim for is, as well as trying to support teams to improve culture and create those conditions for cultures to flourish, we also need to be providing organizations and teams with the ability to maintain an overview of where the cultural, the safety climate, in fact, is sitting within their own organization, so they can pay attention to it. And then be curious about why things may be shifting in real time, because we can't keep doing massive safety culture assessments. You can't use blunt tools like staff surveys. You've got to have a more nuanced way of understanding what's happening. But to go back to your original question, I think we often sidestep doing this because it's on the much too hard to do pile. And one of the things people talk about is, oh, well, I've got 2 or 3 really difficult colleagues in whatever speciality they may be in or whatever professional group, and they make it really, really hard. Well, they will always be there no matter what we do, and it's very difficult to remove that from the organization. But what you can do is, so what we're doing with leaders particularly is getting them to understand the idea about the way in which you intervene when behaviors become outside of what you would want to expect. And the earlier you intervene and the way you intervene is absolutely critical. So the work from Vanderbilt is really interesting and worth looking at, whereby they use these coffee cup interventions. So you need people to feel comfortable to report. So, it's not that you're reporting on somebody because they've, that you're doing it because you want to get them into trouble. You're reporting because you're worried that their behavior is unusual. And I would report to Julie Claire about Cora, then Julie Claire would go and find Cora and have a conversation with her to check, is there something wrong? Can I help? Is there something we need to do to support you? And by doing that early, you see off this very quick escalation that we see certainly in the English system, where it becomes about grievance. It becomes about, sort of interventions that actually limit people's practice. So we need to avoid that, because most of the bad behaviors come from fear. And so understanding where the fear comes from allows us to unpick it. So that's the leadership side. The second bit is, I think as individuals, we are charged with bringing our best behavior to work. So actually doing that repeatedly and relying on each other to do that and enacting those values day in, day out builds up a sense of achievability, builds up a sense of community. And by doing that, it then starts to bleed into everything that we do, because we check ourselves and then we have the same expectation of each other. And that might sound trite, but actually when everyone starts doing that, the environments in which we work in feel entirely different. They feel open, they feel supportive, because we're thinking about the way in which we behave rather than just what we're doing. And I think that's where we've got to move towards. And it's just kind of setting those expectations about how we start these conversations. But I make it sound, it's not easy. This takes, it doesn't take weeks, this takes years. So, we should start small and build up.
And I think the other thing about it, Tony, is really starting it at training level. When you start college, when you start your nurse training or your medical training, your midwifery training, that's and having people together doing that. And I know that's done at the College of Surgeons in Dublin, and I think it's a great idea. But another comment on what you're saying is, once you start those behaviours and that practice, actually it has a really positive impact on individuals as well. So reduces rates of burnout and people feel more happier and satisfied in the work they're doing. Any other questions, queries? Kate or Marcus, can you see anybody amongst if anybody has a burning question, can you shout? Because yes, so Sanjay, got your hand up.
Yeah, from Stoke Mandeville Hospital in Aylesbury. I just wanted to highlight, that, the National Neonatal Audit Project is also heavy on this now, and they have incorporated all the elements and they're aligning all their elements as standards or measures as per BAPM and MAT-NEO things now. So there's also a national drive which allows us to have real-time monitoring of our own data and see where we are as compared to other units. And collaboratively, we are also doing at a regional level as well in our own neonatal networks. And we have an active dashboard looking at all those elements, including working collaboratively and looking at that. So I'm talking about Thames Valley and Wessex neonatal network in conjunction with Kent and Surrey and Sussex network. So it's really moving forward very rapidly. So thank you.
Thank you, Sanjay. It may surprise everyone really that organisations are all talking together, but the BAPM and MatNeoSIP and the NNAP are all on the same page about this, and these are some of the very early conversations that Tony and I had way back when, maybe 2015, 2016, that we should not be duplicating work, we shouldn't be asking clinicians to collect the same data twice, that we should all be working collaboratively to provide clinicians with the support that they need to be able to collect this data and improve outcomes. So I'm glad that's coming across.
Brilliant. So any more? We've got, I don't think no more hands up. So I'd just like to thank everybody again for coming to present today, and for all of the guests to come in and participate and make all your comments. And it's just feels really positive to be on the road now with you know, lots of horsepower. And so thank you to everybody again, and do reach out if you've got any queries or questions. There have been some comments about the slides and about the webinar. The webinar will be available for anybody to see, so do share it with your colleagues as well. Thank you very much.